I first want to thank the LRC for inviting me, and I accepted immediately because I've been a subscriber to the LRC for a long time. It's one of the great Canadian journals. It's a journal of content and ideas, and there's so few of them left in the country. So I'd encourage you to buy a copy and get a subscription to this excellent publication. I wanted to talk today about a new kind of leadership in the country. And I'm not referring to Rob Ford, and I'm not referring to the Wild Rose Party. I'm actually not talking about any kind of political leadership at all. What I'm talking about is a small but growing number of entrepreneurs working in diverse sectors like renewable energy, smart grid, green mobility. What they have in common is the idea that you can use business to solve intractable ecological problems. There are many things that make this group worthy of this mantle of leadership, but foremost among them is that while most of society sits around waiting for someone to take action, they're already out there solving these problems. Even better, they've done so in a peaceful, creative, productive, generally non-partisan way, quietly, without undue fanfare, but effectively focused on generating real results, both economic and environmental. And I think they're giving the country a new hope and pointing a new way forward at a time when we are not meeting our potential in so many respects. Though we're one of the wealthiest countries, and though we've long espoused the idea of global citizenship and good corporate governance and environmental governance, our recent track record clearly has been very poor. In areas like greenhouse gas emissions, we've been so bad we've made the Americans look good, and that's pretty hard to do. If climate change turns out to be as dire as many predict, we will be amongst the worst villains on the planet. But I'm not sure that's worth talking about, but being environmental laggards is not only hurting others, it's hurting us too, because it's clear our lack of action is coming with cost to our economy. Indeed, today we have no national strategies of consequence for greenhouse gas emissions, smart grid, smart mobility, renewable energy production. In short, on the largest economic questions of our time, we have no strategy at all. Compare that to countries like China, for example, that's spending hundreds of billions of dollars in these areas, and it's clear that we are in very grave danger of being left behind. By any measure, the development of environmental technologies represents one of the greatest commercial opportunities of our time. For example, the share of renewable energy today, which on a global basis is about 1% of all energy production, is likely to grow and expected to grow over the next 50 years to around 18%. Considering that the total energy market is growing as well, this suggests a likely increase from around $70 billion today to over $2.5 trillion by the middle of the century. The opportunities in the smart grid infrastructure, demand management, and green mobility are likely to be equally large. So it's no wonder that many of the largest companies on the planet, and I'm thinking of companies like Siemens, General Electric, Cisco Systems, Walmart, Toyota, I could go on and on, are coalescing around these huge market opportunities. And the world's leading venture capitalist, John Doerr from Kleiner Perkins, has said, quote, "Going green is the greatest commercial opportunity of the 21st century." Seen in this context, the principal victim of Canada's weak approach to environmental issues is ourselves. For we are missing a golden opportunity to build a more innovative economy. Indeed, we've remained captives of the staples economy that Harold Innis, our famous political economist, wrote about 70 years ago. We've remained happy hewers of wood, drawers of water. Our TXS is principally the domain of large resource companies, energy, and mining companies. And it's depressing to think that there's really only one company that's known broadly and internationally for cutting-edge innovation in this country, and I don't have to say the name of it because we all know what it is. If you think innovation is a muscle, a capacity that needs to be used and developed to be maintained, we are allowing ours to shrivel and shrink from lack of use. Our investment into risk capital on a per capita basis is a fraction of what it is in the US, and it's declining dramatically. Our large pension funds, who control so much of our wealth in this country, have virtually stopped investing in early-stage private companies in their country, preferring to use their privileged tax status to wander the world buying large cash-generating assets. That's great, but who's going to build the innovation and wealth for the next generation? Our large companies are not investing in the future, and especially in areas like research and development, they're being left behind. All this to say, on both economic and environmental measures, Canada is wandering in the wilderness. But the new entrepreneurs can lead us back and help us cross a bridge to a new economy. Although they're working in disparate, sometimes fragmented sectors, often unaware even of each other's existence, we can start to see them as a united force, a movement that points to a more prosperous direction for the country. Through them, we can see that Canada's economy is at the early stages of an exciting transition. It's a transition that promises to reconcile our ecological and our economic interests. It promises to help rebuild our international reputation. And done properly, I believe it may even provide an opportunity for the country to come together on a large, united project. It's not a break from our history, but rather a proper continuation of it. The resource industries that gave birth to the Canadian economy also built so much of our wealth. We can look back and see from the original Canadian enterprise, the Northwest Company, where Scottish merchants came together with the French natives MAT to build a vast network through the Canadian wilderness, to the next great resource industry, the forest products industry, that used the same river routes to float lumber to markets. Canadians used ingenuity and entrepreneurial smarts to develop our abundant resources and to build a vibrant economy. The new entrepreneurs are building on this foundation of the earlier Canadian entrepreneurs, but with a new insight. Whereas the staples economy was built on the assumption that resources are infinite, now with 200 years of history, the new entrepreneurs understand that natural resources are fundamentally scarce, and that the greatest commercial opportunities of the future arise from learning how to use them most efficiently. Through ingenuity and innovation, they're applying this insight to open up commercial markets and opportunities of staggering potential. I believe this critical insight drives the passion of our new entrepreneurs. It can establish the fortunes and foundations of our economic prosperity into the future. Some of our oldest industries are being reborn around this notion of using ingenuity to drive resource efficiency. And let me talk quickly about 3 examples. The forest products industry is clearly one of the oldest and most important in the country. It's even today responsible for about 230,000 direct jobs and is the principal employer in about 192 communities. But that industry has also been under a lot of stress lately, and their mill towns have closed down all across eastern Canada, and of course a lot of lost jobs. But out of the ashes of the old industry, a new industry is emerging, and this is one where new innovation and new technology is being applied to waste wood in particular, to turn it into various forms of energy. And I've seen a number of companies, well over a dozen in Canada that are leaders in this field, and I'll just mention one. Ensign Technologies is based out of Ottawa, and they have a process called rapid thermal processing, RTP. It's a patented process, and it falls under the fast pyrolysis. It's a form of fast pyrolysis, which is basically the flash heating of biomass to turn it into a fuel, a liquid. And they create a liquid called a pyrolysis oil, and that can then be used in a diesel engine to create electricity. They also believe that it can be turned into a transportation fuel. And Ensign has put together an unbelievable array of global partnerships. Just for example, they're working with UOP, a division of Honeywell, to sell the diesel engines and their RTP process globally, and announced in the last month a major deal in Malaysia. And so I believe, furthermore, that this sector, the biomass sector, is likely to be about $280 billion sector by 2020. And so an example in my mind of a Canadian company using innovation to sort of unlock a new global market opportunity through the forest products sector. Another example is in the desalination sector, and there's a company called Saltworks. And I went to visit Saltworks about 8 months ago, and I was wandering around the Portland in Vancouver, and I couldn't find them anywhere. The address didn't match up, and there were no signs. And I finally find, tucked between 2 buildings, I find this little shop. There's no sign outside, and I go inside, and there's tubes and vessels, and it looks like a sort of a science experiment. And what I discovered is this is a company working on really sort of one of the holy grails of water, and that's figuring out a way to create, to desalinate water using limited amount of energy. And they're using passive solar energy and waste heat to create a system to very efficiently desalinate water. And it's just a massive global opportunity. One of the things that's been holding this industry back is how energy intensive it is to desalinate water. So if Saltworks can figure this process out, they're opening up a massive global market opportunity. And it's probably why the world's been beating a path to their door, and they were written up in The Economist magazine recently. Another company in a different industry that I want to mention quickly is a company called Ensolve. And Ensolve actually comes out of Hatch Engineering. The former CEO of Hatch Engineering, which is a large Canadian engineering firm, helped to found this company. And they are, I believe, capable of bringing innovation to one of the largest industries and one that probably needs the most application of technology, and that's the fossil fuels, in particular the oil sands industry. So Ensolve has a system, and it's applied to what they call the in-situ mine. So it's the deep mines that are too low to use open pit mining techniques, and they use a process called steam-assisted gravity drainage, SAGD. And Ensolve has a means to use a solvent that they believe can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the in-situ projects by 85%. So a real dramatic step forward. And I believe that oil sands is an example of an industry that needs massive investment and massive innovation, and that is the only way really to turn it around from something that I think many of us perceive as a black eye globally, that is something we can be proud of. But I think the potential is there, and there are a lot of companies like Ensolve out there. Our job, I think, is to support these new entrepreneurs by creating the conditions for their success, and in so doing, ushering in the transition from a staples economy to an innovation-based economy. To do that, we will have to embrace the Porter hypothesis, and I'm referring here to the ideas advanced by Michael Porter, who was the famous Harvard business professor. And what he said is basically that innovation can often happen when environmental regulation are imposed upon an economy. And Porter looked at what happened to companies after environmental regulation was imposed upon them, and what he found was surprising and counterintuitive. For in many cases, these companies flourished under environmental regulation and saw their profitability increase dramatically. And he ascribed this to what he called the innovation effect. When firms have constraints imposed upon them, they respond through innovation. This often leads to dramatic increases in productivity and profitability. And shortly after Porter came forward with his thesis and his innovation effect, it was on an economy-wide basis we were able to test this theory. When Finland put in a major carbon tax and Sweden put in a major carbon tax, these are carbon taxes in the hundreds of dollars a ton, far beyond anything any Canadian politician has been brave enough to suggest. And over the next number of years, a number of European countries followed their lead. And so now, with 20 years of history, we can study the effects of these measures. And there was an exhaustive report by the European Commission, and it found that not only had these environmental taxes reduced greenhouse gas emissions, but they actually led to economic growth, and they led to job growth. So these were really a living example of the innovation effect at work. I believe we can take a page from the Europeans and realize that economic growth and progress can come through greening our economy. But this will take courage, for it leads us in a new direction with inevitable uncertainties. And then in this respect, once again, I think we can learn from the new entrepreneurs. Above all, the new entrepreneurs are leaders because they give us a new appreciation of risk, not as something reckless, but as a necessary and inevitable condition of achieving a vision. Canadians, of course, are risk-averse, and sometimes it's served us well. But there are times when there's a risk in not acting. Becoming paralyzed in a time of change is a recipe for failure. But without a clear vision of the future, it's hard to muster the courage to move forward. But when we have that vision, the risks are more manageable. The new entrepreneurs have taught us how important it is to have a vision of the future. And once you have that vision, how necessary it is to take risks to achieve it. I believe that the idea of a transition from a staples economy to an innovation economy, where our abundant natural resources are a springboard for us to become leaders in resource efficiency and preserving natural capital and in selling clean technologies to the world, that this vision, espoused by a new class of entrepreneurs, points in a fresh direction for our economy. Thanks very much, and I think that Toby and I are just going to have a little discussion now.